also recording, so we have a backup. Much appreciated. Let's see. Just making sure. Okay, here he is. Awesome. Well, welcome everyone to the Sovryn Community Call. This is Englandia. I help with partnerships and integrations. We've got some exciting updates for you this week. I am going to kick off the community call like I usually do with a Sovryn verse. So just kick back, enjoy, and listen up.
When I could see and hear.
All right, here goes. Sovryn DeFi. This project was born to win. Lend, borrow, and earn Bitcoin. That's the core of it. The code is all open source. You can explore the Git, launching new projects on a pad called Origin. 70 million TVL. Let's lock it in. No one can stop the system. We stay dominant. We're starting a movement. Hope you rally with us because soon regulators will want to challenge our funds. Hey, Coinbase, you want users to borrow or lend? Well, guess what? The SEC is not your friend. You can be David trying to step to the Goliath, but there's only victory if you decentralize it. Want to secure your funds? Bitcoin fixes this inflation going up. Bitcoin fixes this regulation sucks. Bitcoin fixes this sick of all the FUD. Bitcoin fixes this. Wow. Another Sovryn verse for you guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing in this mission. And the guidelines are, if you'd like to speak, simply raise your hand and wait patiently, and we'll bring you on stage. And before we get this started, would anyone like to raise their hand now and say hi? Okay, let's just kick it off with Iago and the governance updates.
Thanks very much, Englandia. We really need to turn your verses into NFTs, dude. Okay, well, it's another community call. Exciting to be able to talk to you guys again. So much has been going on. In fact, a bunch of the people who would usually be presenting during this call won't be available today just because they're working hard on all of the stuff that's going on. On the governance side, we've got SIP 28, which passed with a high degree of consensus, which adds SOV as collateral. This is being implemented and will allow lending against SOV and then also margin trading long on SOV. Depending on how that goes, it will be possible to start adding additional forms of collateral as well, which will substantially increase the use of the lending pools, increase the amount of assets that the system is able to manage for users, increase the utility of the system, then also add to the utility and then for the revenue generation by the margin trading. We also have SIP 30 and SIP 31 coming out. So both of those are focused on concentrating and improving staking revenues. So SIP 30 concentrate staking revenues with liquid stakers only, and so it will be a big shift in the economics of being a SOV staker. It will represent a significant increase in the stake that liquid stakers see, and then also AMM fees, which represent a significant chunk of the fees being generated by the system now, will now be shared with SOV stakers, assuming that both SIP 30 and SIP 31 pass. Then we also have a number of SIPs around the Origins protocol. One is by MintLayer, who have created a new draft around looking to launch MintLayer through Origins. And then the SIPs around the Origins subprotocol were published today by Shebin on the forum. And Shebin, who has really played an important role in building out Origins. And the team that are working with him are looking to move this forward as the first subprotocol, which will allow Sovryn to scale. Now, subprotocols is a big topic, and I think it's a topic that we're going to be discussing quite a lot over the coming weeks. It's an experiment in creating a much more scalable form of governance and a much more scalable protocol, and moving Sovryn towards the vision of an operating system for Bitcoin Layer 2 and an operating system for sovereignty. I think also Shebin is looking to find additional community members who would be interested in working on the project, and so he'll probably we'll create an opportunity for him to talk during this community call. But I think you can also feel free to reach out to him if this is a project that is interesting to you. Then, in addition to that, we had a large bundle release, which introduced a large number of improvements. I'll leave that to later in the call for the development team to discuss. And we also had the first exchange listing, centralized exchange listing for SOV. And so that was an important milestone in Sovryn's sort of maturation. Sovryn has taken a very, very different approach from pretty much any protocol I can imagine. Building first its own system, launching its own governance, using that governance to launch the protocol, then using that protocol to launch the token, and then trading that token. And I think that was exactly the right thing to do. I think it helped us hone in on what's most important, eat our own dog food, and build out the community that we've built. And I think that now that more players are starting to integrate with Sovryn and with SOV and start listing SOV, they're basically becoming front ends for the Sovryn protocol. There was an interesting conversation that happened on Twitter in the first episode of Sovryn Spaces, where you can find it on our YouTube, where Anthony Pompliano was a guest, but also AscendEX were a guest and spoke about some of their plans around integrating directly with the Sovryn protocol. We also know that there are a number of other centralized exchanges that are looking in the near term to be listing SOV. So I think this is going to be a growing and an accelerating trend. And I think for me personally, of course, there's a degree of mixed feelings around this, right? Ideally, we would see everything decentralized, but I think as these projects become more like front ends or exchanges become access points to the Sovryn protocol, I think this is a very powerful net good for the protocol. And so it's been a lot of stuff coming out. I think it has been a very powerful 2 weeks. And we're deep into our September roadmap, which is moving along quite quickly. The one thing that we presented during the last meeting, where we had a very aggressive and very packed, ambitious roadmap that looked like it might be slipping into October, is the limit orders, and that's primarily around making sure that we're able to provide correct notifications to users around their limit orders being executed or not. So a huge amount of work being done by the team, a lot of support that we're getting from the community. You guys have really taken it upon yourselves. Like, we've been seeing way more discussion and way more effort by the community in Twitter and Reddit and social media, and in Discord, also helping new users. And we've been starting to see more and more new users, and that has been extremely helpful. So that's awesome, and let's keep that up. So with that, I'll hand it back to Englandia. Englandia, the only thing is, let's try and make space for Shebin to talk about his thoughts around the Origin subprotocol, the OG token, and let's have some opportunity for the community to discuss. One other thing I'll say, I don't know how much depth we'll be able to get into that in the limited time of this community call. And so there's plans for, I think, tomorrow, a AMA around origins and subprotocols. And I think there'll be plenty, and we should be creating plenty of opportunity to discuss this.
All right, excellent. Thanks a lot, Iago. Exiled would, I figure we'll go through the updates first, and then we'll let Shebin share about his proposal that he just submitted. Excel, are you covering Aurora and Sue who aren't here at the moment?
I guess I can do that. I've got notes from Aurora, so please be tolerant of how much information I can give everybody, because I'm going to be reading from notes. Sue's is really quick, and then I'll just go right into adoption. I'll do it all in one go. Okay?
Much appreciated.
All right, cool. So the first thing, as Yago mentioned, was the bundled release, which has improved emergency stops, and this was requirement for ownership transfer to governance via the SIP. There's improved protocol events that the team has implemented, trading rebates with 50% rebates, 90% of which is liquid and 10% is vested. There's now the possibility to define max slippage on margin trades. The referral system has been completed, but is not yet implemented. So that's going to be coming up in the next, in a future release, that'll be enabled. Same thing with swap fees. This will be dependent on the SIP passing, but the technology is done. We also have implemented SOV collateral for borrowing. Next Monday, the SOV margin long will be available. It's now finishing up its testing, so look for that on Monday, maybe Tuesday of next week. The team's also been working this sprint on the preparation for our next bundle release. So previously, we've been, just pushing out all of the individual updates to the protocol and to the DApp. And we're moving towards this bundled release schedule, which is in synchronization with our biweekly sprints. So upcoming in the next bundled release is fee distribution only in BTC, which everybody's been looking for. So that means that there won't be all of these token address, these pool token stuff in the claim interface. So now fee distribution will be natively in BTC, bringing us closer to Bitcoin native DeFi. So it's taken us a while to get to that point, but that's coming next week in the bundled release. Vesting contracts will be excluded from fee sharing, also a result of the community input and our SIPs. So that will be getting implemented in the next bundled release. The vesting registry has been refactored, which enables us to register multiple vesting contracts per address, which simplifies a lot in the user experience. And there's also been the vesting automation contract, which enables the system to save time on internal processes, which means also an improvement in the user experience on the DApp. The big one, which I think that everybody's been looking for, I see it so often across our channels as being key to the success of Sovryn. Everybody loves fast BTC in. Everybody wants fast BTC pegging out. It's not yet ready for production because there's a couple of important things that need to be implemented and tested, like double spend protection and gas fee bumping. But we have a working proof of concept that is in testing. So we're not far away from this one, guys. Don't hold us to any dates, but we're working on it as fast as we can. And this is going to be a huge step forward for us. We've also updated our internal Sovryn node, the watcher nodes, to use version 2. The main difference here is that funds are being held by a smart contract, which is more secure and concentrated liquidity. Previously, liquidity was split between different wallets with different purposes. There were like 2 for liquidations, 1 for rollovers. So this is a huge optimization as well. We advise our community members who run a Sovryn node to do the same upgrade to V2. And this is another big one, is the first version of perp swaps has been deployed to testnet, and there's optimization and improvements being worked on before it goes into testing and a front end. So that's been a lot of work in progress there. On the creative and design side, from Sue, The team has been working on the same things mentioned in the last call, but have also are working now on the perp swaps interface and Zero, integrating those into the front end of the dApp, and they've putting quite a bit of work into creating NFTs now. You guys have seen we did the Bukele El Salvador NFT last week, and we're going to be issuing special edition NFTs for the sex launches, and hopefully we'll be batch minting the fish tokens coming up soon. So the artwork and preparations for that has been done. And I'd like to give a shout out to Fineline for the infographics for social media that you guys have seen that we've started posting. This work grew out of the amazing productivity of the adoption team that's come together over the last weeks. We've started doing brainstorming and have got into more process-oriented discussions about everything that's coming up. And so really, the team's coming together so well. And thanks so much, Fineline, for your great work under deadline, getting out these infographics around the sex launches. For myself, in adoption, I guess you guys probably have noticed as a community that there's quite a bit more chatter going on across multiple different channels about Sovryn. This has all been essentially in motion for the last 3 or 4 weeks, where Yago and myself have added external agencies in addition to bringing Malva onto the team, who will be coming on full-time in October. He's handing off in his previous job, but the 2 weeks that he spent with us so far have brought a lot more organization and process into the team, which has enabled us to create content and get it out to our external agencies. We have a guerrilla marketing agency working for us. We have earned content agency working for us, getting us articles that are about Sovryn in the media. And like I said, we're reaching out to influencers with documentation all around what it is that's happening this month. Essentially, our narrative is the Sexy 6 September, spelled CEXY. You experienced yesterday the first one. There's a couple more coming up. So as we've been saying, that's up to those exchanges to make the announcements, but we have the materials to back it up and continue the trajectory of everybody talking about Sovryn. So it's been really, really an exciting couple of weeks and month here to actually see the results of our work. Another part of our narrative is obviously, as Yago mentioned, the subprotocols. We've been also working on the communications materials for Origins. Creative team has been designing new elements and a brand identity. And so that goes as well for Zero. So there's a lot of work happening there in adoption, preparing the communications for that. Additionally, we're bringing on Anita Posh, who you guys know as a podcaster, is now going to be broadcasting from the Sovryn YouTube channel, continuing her work, interviewing key Bitcoiners in the space, key Lightning people in the space, doing her research in South America and in Africa. As you know, we've released the book together with Anita on learning Bitcoin. And so the Spanish language version of the book is going to be launched in November. There are 2 Bitcoin conferences. One is a Lightning conference and another one is a Bitcoin conference that are happening in San Salvador in November. And Anita will be down there creating content, broadcasting live for Sovryn from there and launching her book. But hopefully tomorrow, at the latest by Friday, we'll be putting up the first podcast from Anita, which is an interview with Adam Back from Blockstream. And also on the schedule on a week-by-week basis are people like Diego Gutierrez from RSK, Joshua Skigalia from the Standard IO, Jörg Platzer and Elise Kalin. And then after Anita comes back from El Salvador in November, then we're going to be doing a weekly news roundup, half-hour Monday or Tuesday show, alternating with myself or Yago together with Anita. doing a weekly news wrap-up show. Also, coming off of our experience with the Pomp podcast, the Pomp Spaces day before yesterday, we've decided to do this as well on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, inviting people to discuss and debate issues with us on Twitter Spaces. The amount of AMAs that are coming in now around the sex listings, it's just the floodgates have opened, and so we're juggling schedules and getting more people onto the communication promotion schedule, like the GIMP, who is going to be doing an AMA tomorrow where there's a giveaway, as you guys have seen in our channels, for creating great video and static image memes. We've got a lot of stuff in the pipeline coming down for the next months to really up our marketing game. And that covers it for me.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Exile. I can run through just some brief updates regarding the business development side. By the way, if you're based in New York and going to mainnet, I'll be there, so feel free to say hi. I'm working on the RAF listing, which should be proposed in the forum rather soon. Just to shed a little bit of light on the Origins sale process, for projects that want to take part in the actual launch pad, launching their token. It's often the first step is figuring out the tokenomics, what you want the proposed sale to be, to what audience, what you want to raise in, how much, things like that. And then next would be the forum post, and then the on-chain proposal, the ratification, hopefully, and then the promotion and the sale. So there are half a dozen to a dozen projects that are looking to get on this pipeline, and I'm sort of just streamlining the process for that to happen. We just had Iago interview with Chris Black, his new podcast series about decentralization with DeFi projects, and he'll also be featuring at a Wyoming conference next week. And I'm also speaking with wallet apps on integration. So not just the listing of the SOD token, but involving Sovryn's products on the back end, with the goal of creating adoption of our stablecoins, such as our Bitcoin-backed stablecoin, as well as XUSD. So does anyone have questions on anything said thus far? I haven't seen a single hand raised.
There's a hand up.
Is there?
Yeah, Goldbansk. And there was another hand previously.
Oh, okay.
By the way, the Chris Black interview just dropped like a minute ago. You can find it on my Twitter. And it's a very long conversation, but I think gets to places that we usually don't get to. So it's pretty cool.
All right. I'm having trouble seeing the raised hand. So are you guys able to bring up the people, or I can just switch to my desktop maybe?
Sure. So the hands have disappeared right now. But I'm sure people will have a desire to bring up questions. Right. What I think maybe. Yeah. So I'll just give a quick introduction. So we've been talking about subprotocols now for a few weeks, and the primary reason that this has emerged was due to Babelfish. So if you remember in previous community calls, when Babelfish was being discussed, one issue kept on being raised, which was a very important issue, which is how do you manage systemic risk from protocols that are working with Sovryn? For example, Babelfish creates the XUSD token. XUSD is now a primary stablecoin in the Sovryn ecosystem. If something goes wrong with XUSD, that potentially can have knock-on effects on other parts of the Sovryn ecosystem. So what you want to have is the ability for Sovryn to be able to the Sovryn community to be able to have some degree of sovereignty over things like systemic risk in the system. That was the genesis of talking about subprotocols, a way for the SOV bureaucracy to scale, to manage or have influence over subprotocols. And a second part of it was you can't have the SOV bureaucracy vote on everything. It's too many votes. It would become too much of a queue. And it would also mean that voters would be forced to vote on things where they had too little information because there would be too much going on. So how do you scale governance is the second big part of it, right? How do you keep the community together, manage the safety of the community and the ecosystem together as a community, while at the same time scaling governance? And from there, the need to, if we want to build out a different type of ecosystem, the need to create these types of sub-protocol systems emerged, and that's where the conversation is coming from. And Origins has presented itself as a really good example of that, because things that launch through Origins are likely to be traded on Sovryn, are likely to be in the lending and borrowing pools and potentially get introduced as collateral. And they also introduce the cultures of the different projects that are launching and become part of the wider Sovryn ecosystem. And so I think with that introduction, I'd like to ask Sheben to join us. Sheben, are you there?
Let me see if I can invite him up.
He says that his hand raised.
I just did that. I just invited him. I just invited him.
Yeah, so he's got a raised hand.
Oh, there he is. No problem.
Hey guys, hello. Thank you for having me. So Origins is going to be one of the first protocols which is being done by Sovryn. This is going to be like, I am really excited on how the possibilities with the Origins and how we can actually scale things for the Bitcoin decentralized finance system and the entire ecosystem. So this with this we are like, the vision is to provide every project which when we take the case of the Coinbase, the problem was that they are a centralized system. They are linked to a country. So these are the problems which I think we could solve from using Origins, and having Origins as a decentralized autonomous organization. It gives us very good cover over everything. So these are the things I think we want to do with Origins. I have really good ideas and would like to discuss this with the community members and see how this goes, and build this system with an iterative model and see how we can scale these things. Yeah, I'm a little too excited for this community right now.
Sheben, do you mind if I give like a quick overview?
Sure.
Okay, so Origins platform, I think you guys are all familiar with. What does a sub-protocol Origins look like, right? So what does Sovryn Origins become? Well, as a sub-protocol, under the current proposal, Origins would continue to be part of the Sovryn protocol. It would have a token which is bound to SOV through a bonding curve. This token would be usable in the Bitocracy when it comes to voting on things that are related to Origins. So, for example, new upgrades or implementations, use of budget, and maybe most importantly, which projects are allowed to launch on Origins. It would also provide a path to delegation, right? So how do we create an even more decentralized governance system? One of the early implementations was to introduce the ability for people to delegate their vote and to have multiple different parts of the community delegating together. this needs further implementation. And one of the ways that we can get this to become more useful and more used is to have these sub-protocols effectively become communities within the Sovryn community and participate in SOV governance using the SOV tokens that are sort of within the bonding curve. This will take time to develop, and there are questions around exactly how to implement it, but it provides a very, very interesting path towards creating a decentralized community doing many, many things, but still remaining unified. It also is the case that the OG token, which is the proposed name for the Origins token, would also be used for Origin-specific things. So, for example, participation in pre-sales could be whitelisted through for OG stakers in addition to or separately from SOV stakers. And then there's also the matter of revenues that are driven. So the idea is that revenues that are driven by the Origins platform, and so this would be, for example, the fee for listing on Origins, would be collected by SOV stakers in part. So in the current proposal, it's 50% would be collected by SOV stakers, another 20% collected by the Origins protocol treasury itself, and then the rest, so that's 30% effectively shared upstream to the SOV mother protocol, the Sovryn protocol. And because Origins would be staking and acting as a delegate, it would also receive part of the wider ecosystem in downstream revenue. And so what this would mean is that all sub-protocols would be tied together, both sharing their revenue upstream and receiving parts of the entire ecosystem revenue downstream.
And participating in each other's voting.
Well, they would participate in voting upstream, and the Sovryn Plutocracy would participate downstream. So, for example, let's say Origins decided to list BitConnect 2, right? An obvious scam. The community got greedy, right? And they decided that they wanted to introduce the scam. The SOV Plutocracy would have guardianship over OG token Plutocracy and would therefore be able to veto that decision, right? So this is not expected to be something which happens frequently, but it is expected to, or for example, like let's say with the Zero subprotocol decided to make it too risky, changed parameters to be very, very risky. Again, SOV Plutocracy could step in and say, no, this is introducing systemic risk or introducing some other form of undesirable activity into our community. So this is an idea which I don't think we've seen a parallel for in the crypto space, but it is something that we've seen a parallel for in other types of governance. So, Switzerland has been extremely prosperous and extremely peaceful now for 500 years, and they have a canton system where Switzerland effectively has 50 autonomous zones which govern themselves, but also participate up to overall Swiss governance, which has some veto rights over what the cantons can do. There's a very powerful tool here in terms of being able to have localized governance for specific communities. And there's also a big question, which is, are we constructing this in the right way to move forward? And I think that as opposed to the federal structure in the United States, the canton system emerged organically and was a form of experimentation over time. And I think that that's what we should be aiming to do. What happens with Origins will become something that we learn from, and then we can adapt based on that, just like we've adapted to what we've seen with Babelfish, and improve our understanding of how to develop this kind of scalable governance.
So if I could, can I say a couple things, Idon?
Sure.
Great. So Ingemar, Yago, myself, John Light, and a couple of other people have spent the last week together with Sheben designing this draft proposal, looking at the alternatives, and trying to align the incentives both financially in terms of governance. And the reason for the forum post is for that to be picked apart by the community and look at the holes in the logic on either the economic or on the governance side, and for this to be a process that we decide on together. This is our best, draft proposal, and it's up to the rest of the community to be involved in the forum post and to basically optimize this first experiment with the subprotocol token. I'd also like everybody to know now I've enabled requests from everyone. So if you raise your hand now, I will see you there. You don't have to turn it off, and we can bring you on stage at the proper time. Did you want to continue, Yago, or should we invite?
I think it would be great. I think it would be great to use this as an opportunity to discuss and for us to have like a conversation.
Right. Okay. So I mean, I've seen some people request to speak, and then they disappeared in the sidelines. So if you want, okay, there we go. Fuwu, inviting you up to the stage now. Great. Anybody else that wants to get involved, please send me a speaking request. Okay.
Yeah, so I think when they're not in the community, they're probably just a troll. So we have David.
Going to give people an opportunity, and so we just banned him. So no problem. Mr. Sarai.
Yeah, so first off, like amazing. The past few weeks, I just feel like are incredible. So like props to the team as always. Just really exciting future. So on the sub protocol, I'm kind of confused. Like when I read Sheben's draft proposal, it's like there's tokenomics where there's coins that are already kind of being allocated. But my understanding is there's essentially 0 tokens in a sub protocol until you mint those new tokens by entering into the bonding curve. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that. Are there like a certain allocation of tokens that already exist and then you can create more by adding into the bonding curve? I was confused by that.
Sure. So I think one of the other questions that I've seen, and it's a related question, and it's a very good question, is let's start with an even more basic question, David, if that's cool with you. Why even have another token? And there's effectively, I think, 3 reasons. The first, before I get into the reasons, let me say, I think for a long time, I've been thinking, and I think other people in the community as well, have been thinking of ways of doing this. Even before the Babelfish issue sort of became an example that we could point to of why this was important, how do we create these local governance pools? And do so in a way where there's proper incentivization. And so I don't know if you guys remember, but a while back, in the forum, I proposed, for example, the creation of a different type of token, which would provide future rewards from the Sovryn protocol to take into account the fact that Sovryn's going to grow, and people who are staking now are like staking now, but really they're growing the system. And for various reasons, the community didn't think that was a good idea. I think I agree with the community, but it was my attempt to try and think like, okay, how do we take SOV tokens and maybe like wrap those SOV tokens or provide additional utility around those SOV tokens so that they can be more specifically geared to a specific use case. The truth of the matter is, I think we haven't found a way of doing that, and we may never find a way of doing it. It may not be a practical thing to do, to just use SOV to do, either wrapped or unwrapped, to do all of these things with and still create the proper incentives. And so
it's also a lot of complexity just adding functionality onto SOV, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily more complex. Like maybe if we had a way of doing it at all, we could find a simple way of implementing it. But I don't think anyone has a theory even which is coherent. And I think what this comes down to is that a phrase which I think about a lot, which is that in theory, there's no difference between theory and practice, but in practice there is, right? So for example, with Bitcoin, the theory is you only ever, especially with Bitcoin maximalism, theory is there only needs to be ever one token in the world. That token is Bitcoin, and anything else is a scam, right? That doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. And it's part of the reason why we have Sovryn, right? Why Sovryn has SOV. You need to have some kind of tokenization of the specific types of powers, incentives, risks that allow you to express that in a way where people can use it as a tool for coordination. When we introduce the subprotocols, we encounter the same kind of issue, and it basically boils down to three things. The first is, how do you create local governance? How do you create a way for people to represent their opinion, or even to separate themselves, right, as a part of the community that is particularly interested in one thing, right, and galvanize? In other words, how do they coordinate amongst themselves as this part of the community? And then obviously there's the part where you don't want everything going through the same bitocracy. Now, why not just have people stake into separate bitocracies which work in the same way? And that brings us to the two next reasons. One is the problem of incentives. So building out a subprotocol means an investment of resources. It means a team that's focused on that. It means that we want to have more decentralization. So we want to have, parts of the community able to focus on specific things. And you want to be able to, on the one hand, have that group be able to coordinate amongst themselves without having to drag in everyone else or be exposed to all of the other things. And on the other hand, you also want to limit the overall ecosystem's exposure to the decisions that they make, because each of these subprotocols is an additional layer of experimentation, and so you want to allow that experiment to go. You also need to create the right incentives for that community to participate in that, to invest in that, and for the core team that is going to be working on it to be properly incentivized to work in it. And then that's very related to the third reason, which is that ultimately each of these things is a separate project. As you are building out an entire economy around Sovryn and around Bitcoin, for the same reason that not all the companies spin off separate projects, that not all companies have the same shares, right? It used to be the case that it was just like one big company did everything, right? The Dutch East India Company, for example, was the one company. It became obvious that that is not an efficient way of managing things, because there's not enough sensitivity to the specific, to the people participating do not have enough specificity of incentives with regards to the decisions that they're making or the things that they're involved in. And beyond that, when we look at what has been successful time and time again in the crypto space, we see that allowing for this type of tokenization really, really grows an economy. So, we've seen it on Ethereum, we're seeing it on Solana now, we're seeing it on the other protocols as well. When you try to limit everything to just one token, you make it very, very difficult for people to galvanize around particular projects, to incentivize those projects and to fund those projects. And you also don't create the trade that you want to have, where people, there's a very, very important predictive role to finance, right? Finance helps allocation of resources, and one of the ways it does that is by buying and selling, right? Investing, right? So when people are selling Apple stock, they're basically providing a market signal that something is going wrong with Apple. And by having a separate token which can trade on the AMM, of course, there's the nice side effect of having additional fees on the AMM and additional TVL in the system. But what's really important is that the market is able to provide a signal which is separated and unique to what happens with Origins, what happens with Zero, around the decisions that those projects are taking, and allows competition to arise. And so for those three reasons, local governance incentives for the community and the team, and the ability to develop an economy and the financial signal that comes from it, you want to have a separate token, to my mind, right? And then with regards to David's part of the question, the idea with the ability to create these additional tokens, which, in other words, not all tokens. So if it was a one-to-one in the bonding curve, then what you would only be doing basically is wrapping an SOV token. And so you would always have this one-to-one relationship. You could basically, at that point, say that there's no need for the separate token. And you also don't have the way to incentivize the fundraising, the community development, and the community that's going to be building and developing on that project. And so that was a long answer, but those are the reasons around why to have a token at all, and why also you would create sort of a separate tokenomics or separate allocation.
So I'd like to give Rob a chance to ask a question now. Thanks, David, for that one.
Hi guys. Yeah, I might have been a little early to raise my hand, just because the long answer Jaco gave already is kind of answers my question already, because just as you told us to express our opinions with regards to the governance in these subprotocols, I might not have been up to date quite well, but I just remembered the Uniswap governance protocol, in which there were some proposals, perhaps in some subprotocols as well, where a few whales were trying to get some grants from the Uniswap treasury in order to get some donations or some funds allocated to their purpose, and that purpose was, I think it was some education purpose, but it didn't do anything. So
but A16 did come out with adjustments to their governance procedure to address that. So even the large VCs are responsive to altering the governance rules to make voting more equitable and to guard against unequal voting. Just to point that out, Rob.
Exactly. I just wanted to express this this in case you hadn't thought of it, and I just wanted to make sure that we think about some kind of warning or some kind of mechanism that something could not happen to Sovryn. So that's what I wanted to tell. But I think that if you have a separate token instead of so separated from the SOV token, that could be guaranteed as well. That's a guarantee in order not to drain funds for anything.
Exactly. I think that's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to make clear. Thanks.
Thanks, Rob.
Great. Thanks, Rob. Kcoin? So you have to unmute if you want to ask a question, Kcoin. Hey, if you can't find your unmute button, Kcoin, I'm going to remove you from the stage and give John Lambrecht a chance to ask a question.
Hey guys, great job so far. I'm wondering if you can speak on the role of Lightning Network and Rootstock, just basically an overview of what the plans are with Sovryn, Lightning, and Rootstock.
So I'll give a quick overview, and then Exalt, maybe you'll talk about what the status of the grant is. So there's from the hackathon, there came through two teams which have now combined and are working on a number of ways of integrating Lightning Network with Sovryn and with Rootstock. And the key primitive that they're building first is the ability to do submarine swaps, which are basically atomic swaps done through the Lightning Network, and would allow direct deposits of BTC to RBTC, or even conversion of BTC directly into SOV, for example, maybe other tokens. It also would allow for a connection between Lightning Network and Lumino. Lumino being the rootstock side of the Lightning Network, and that would also allow for Bitcoin-backed stablecoins, as well as other tokens. But I think it's most important for the stablecoins to be transacted on a Lightning Network type system, so an extension of the Lightning Network. And I think in places like El Salvador, that's going to be like one of the first test grounds of how we can bring dollars to El Salvador that are backed by Bitcoin instead of being controlled by Fed issuance. This is going to take some doing, right? Like I think the primitives are being built out, but making sure that it's really, really seamless will take some time. And so the first experience that I think users will have is just the ability to move in and out from Lightning Network. And maybe Exile, you'd like to talk about the status of that grant.
Yeah, so we've done the approval of the grant, and we've notified the team members that we're going to fund the grant. What we've been waiting for is a final review of the spec from Dark Matter, who's been, as many community members know, busy with sorting out the misallocation of fish tokens. So the Babelfish team have been working very, very hard on that, and Dark Matter hasn't had the time to do the final review of the spec before it is that we actually commission the work. But I will give you guys an overview of the goal and the milestones. And as soon as it is that Dark Matter is given the final review, we'll be posting the funded grant outline to the forum so that the whole community sees what it is that we're supporting. But essentially, the goal of the team is to build an open source and fully working, decentralized, and well-documented submarine swap implementation that supports RBTC and SOV to Bitcoin on Lightning, and Bitcoin on Lightning to RBTC and SOV that can be deployed by anyone. That's the goal. The milestones that they have are to deploy an RBTC Lightning Network contract back-end, front-end. And they're looking at the milestone is 3 weeks for that deliverable. The milestone 2 is to build an SOV community Lightning Network bridge node and to move it to mainnet. Also another additional 3 weeks for that milestone. The third milestone that we're funding is to build an ERC20 support to enable SOV Lightning Network contract backend and front end. Again, a 3-week timeline on that. The fourth milestone in the proposal is to Dockerize the InSov bridge for self-hosted nodes. And in the fifth milestone, they're looking to then aggregate liquidity. The final milestone would be maintenance of this system, and so looking over that, we're looking at a 2 to 3 month development period. Is what is involved in the grant. Congratulations to the team for being so extensive in documenting that, and as I can say again, you guys have seen the results of the things that we've been working on for the last month. There's too few of us who have too many tasks to move everything forward at the same pace. But very soon we'll be getting the Lightning team working on this grant proposal. Kcoin, are you ready to ask a question now? You'll need to unmute.
I think he just likes chilling on stage.
Okay, well,
I personally find being on stage not chill, but nerve-wracking, but whatever. To each their own.
Great. So it's surprising that Whipper doesn't have 7 questions today. Anybody else in the community that has questions for us on this call about anything? You just have to send us a request.
Looks like David Saroy wants to, and then I think we can also switch over to the unrecorded part where frequently there are more questions.
Yeah. Okay. He disappeared. There we go. Great.
David, you there? He's figuring out his mic situation.
Okay, I've Off Radar has been invited to come on stage. So
Yo, can you guys hear me?
All right, I'll let him go first. That's cool.
all right, so let's do it in this row: Desaroy, and then Off Radar, and then Corsario. Okay.
Can you guys hear me? I don't know if
Yeah.
it's working. Okay.
Can you mute yourself?
Corsario, you need to mute, please.
I'm just wondering, we've been hearing a lot of talk between Zero Protocol and then Sovryn Mint. I'm just confused. What's the difference between those?
So those are like the working titles right now. So there's the Zero team, which is working on creating an ability to generate zero interest loans on Bitcoin. The way this would happen is it would create a token, currently codenamed ZUSD, and ZUSD would be a Bitcoin-backed stablecoin. However, most people will never see or touch ZUSD. And the reason is we have previously, I think it was around 3 community calls or 4 community calls ago, discussed how to create the most or the least volatile and most secure stablecoin, you want to have different types of issuances. So, for example, money on chain type issuance has one advantage. The ZUSD type issuance has another advantage. The Raya type issuance has a different advantage. And so the goal of the Sovryn Mint protocol is to effectively aggregate these into one canonical Bitcoin-backed stablecoin, which is going to be more stable and cheaper to use because it uses these different types of issuance mechanisms. And so there's currently 3 developers working on the Sovryn Mint thing. They had provided a lot of assistance to the Babelfish team. And so a lot of the technology that was used in the XUSD aggregator is being used in the Sovryn Mint aggregator. And so basically ZUSD would become one component with DOC and with other Bitcoin stablecoins that other projects are working on. So for example, the RIA team are looking to get a grant to work on another way of doing the issuance, and then the perpetual swap team have an idea for another way of creating issuance. And then Sovryn Mint would aggregate them.
All right, we have one more question, and then I'm gonna have to close out the community call. Of course, if we want to continue the discussion, we can go over to the lounge area.
Well, no, we can continue here. You just have to stop the recording, Ingomar. Right?
Yeah, I mean, if that's what we want to do, sure.
Yeah, there's no reason to change the room if everybody's here. Yeah.
Okay.
So Off Radar, you had the next question, and that'll be the last one that we record for the call. Please.
Thank you. I appreciate you touched on origins earlier when you were speaking about it, and I thought the information was quite helpful. And the question I have also, I appreciate that this may be quite early, but in regards to sales of the origin token, would there be a pre-sale or whitelisting mechanism as used previously?
So
so
if you go to the forum post, you'll see that there will be multiple opportunities to acquire the token.
Mm-hmm.
It's specified in the SIP. These are our draft proposals. So pre-sale conditions for SOV stakers, and pre-sale conditions for early funders, which would be large funders. In the proposal that is now on the forum, the price will be different, will be the same for both SOV stakers and for early funders, but
Right.
the vesting period and the caps on how much that can be purchased will be different.
Right.
And then there's also additional programmatic sales being offered, and nothing is fixed in stone yet. The best place is to read the SIP on the forum and get involved with the discussion on how it is that you'd like to see it take place.
Sheben, would you like to comment on that at all?
Yeah, actually, so Exile summed it up really good. So that's how we are thinking we should go, but we are actually open to how community sees it, and if there is any better way, we are actually open to that. And please comment in the forum.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
All right, and with that, I will close the recording of this call and just thank
Alfredo, can you please mute? Thank you.
So thanks again, everyone, for being part of our mission, carving out a trail for Bitcoin secured financial sovereignty, dismantling what people know and understand about money. So help us spread the word and create more sovereign individuals. So this adjourns the recorded portion of the call. Anyone who wants to hang, ask questions, you're welcome to do so.